What is up, everybody, to the nations worldwide? This is the Travel Couple Podcast, where we introduce you to couple travelers who offer their advice on how you can travel the world together while earning money, living that digital nomad lifestyle. We're your hosts, Mike Pletz and
Natalie.
Tune in every Wednesday as we interview couples living a digital nomad lifestyle, traveling the world while earning an income, and get relationship advice about being on the road with your significant other. Listen how others are struggling and thriving in their personal and business lives, all while traveling the world. This is your one-stop podcast for travel, relationship, and business goals. Check out us online at tothenationsworldwide.com to see everything that we've got going on, and join us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/tothenationsworldwide. In today's episode, we talk with online business owners Jim and Kim. Jim provides one-on-one mentoring to people looking to start their own business at theuntamedentrepreneur.com. Kim is an artist and founder of Vega Beyond, where you can find her at kimudan.com. We talk with them about starting your own business, building an audience, and traveling the world together. So without further ado, here's our interview with Jim and Kim. Today we are joined by Jim and Kim. Since March 2017, they have been living nomadically whilst running their own businesses. Kim is an artist and founder of Vega Beyond, whilst Jim provides one-on-one mentoring to people who are looking to start their own business. Hello, Jim and Kim, and welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for taking the time out of your day to be on this podcast with us. Thank you so much. Let's just get started by letting the two of you, tell a bit about yourselves to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So the two of us, it's quite a long story, so I'll try and keep it short. The two of us met when we were really young. We actually went to the same school together. So we met when we were 11 years old, and then we became close at about 17 when our school we went into college basically. And we'd always kept in touch. The two of us have always travelled, but independently before we got together as a couple. So from 17, we always kept in touch. We Skyped. We actually wrote letters, didn't we?
You're not supposed to say that on air. It's embarrassing.
We wrote letters to each other when I was in France during a ski season, and Jim was back in England, and then when Jim was in Canada, but we won't go into the details. And then we actually got together coming up 5 years ago when Jim came back to England. I was currently in England. And it was actually while we were traveling, we decided to do a weekend away just as friends at the time. And then, Jim got me drunk in Barcelona. That's the story.
Kim realised what she'd been missing for the last 10 years, basically.
Gotcha.
So it's great. So, we know each other really, really well. Our families know each other, so it just made sense. So, yeah, coming up 5 years, we've been a couple, but we've known each other for about 20 years, which is scary.
Wow. That does make you sound old.
Yeah.
That is an incredible story, and you've known each other for so long. Has knowing each other really well just translated perfectly into your relationship together, basically?
Yeah, it basically, we didn't need to. There was no getting to know you period. It was a case of once we realised we wanted to be together, there was no warming up necessary. It was just, everything just sort of hit the ground running because we knew each other. We knew exactly what each other liked. We knew what we were passionate about. We trusted each other implicitly. We had sort of mutual friends. Our families vaguely knew each other. It meant the relationship started off really, really strongly. And so we got together in Spain, but then I was living in Australia at the time. So Kim moved to Australia about 6 months later, where we lived. But I'd been by the time we left for 5 years. Kim, you would join me for the last 3 years. And then, we started traveling from Australia. So by the time we started traveling, we'd known each other. We'd lived together in Australia for a few years. So all the pieces were in place, basically. Made it nice and easy.
That's awesome, for sure. So I'm going to just jump right in and talk to you guys about travel. And when I go through this section, I like to start with a simple 2-word question that for so many couples has such a complex response. And that question is, why travel?
Well, I think that if you're thinking of the the 6 human needs, significance, variety, certainty, contribution, and I can't remember what the other ones are. For me, I can't speak for Kim. I'm pretty sure I know the answer anyway. But for me, variety is a huge need of mine. I get bored quickly. I get bored in the same place, in the same job, with the same people, with the same environment. So traveling ticks a huge box for that for me. And I love seeing new places. I mean, I don't just give an answer that I'm sure every single one of your guests gives about meeting new people and seeing new things. But it's just, for me, it's about, ticking that variety box, not having too much structure and rigidity, and sort of flying by the seat of our pants. If I have too much planned out, it sort of scares me a little bit. It's probably the male commitment phobe in me. And I enjoy different climates, different activities, and being able to do those things as and when is brilliant. And also, one of the main reasons for me is I was living in Australia, but I used to live in Canada before that. So I've got friends in the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and I was getting to a point where I was missing too many major events like weddings and stag do's or bachelor parties, as you'd call them. And I realized I didn't want to miss any more. So traveling, one of the remits of it was that we were going to be able to go and do and attend any events we wanted to whenever we wanted to, and not be bound by our jobs. That's the main thing for me anyway. But Kim, I think you've sort of got your own nuances to that.
Yeah, absolutely. The variety is huge for both of us, but also from my creative business as well as just the person that I am. The inspiration is huge. Going to a new place, all these new cultures and colours and everything that goes into my personal artwork, but also what Jim was saying about the people and the friends that we've met, because both of us have always travelled. I heard this a couple of months ago, and it's socialising globally. We love going to different events and catching up with people, so that's definitely part of the planning that we do, is to see people that we know and go to places that we have relationships. Yeah,
and hosting people and being hosted by friends.
Yeah.
We love that side of things. It's so much more entertaining when you can go to a country and know somebody who's already there, or a city, and hang around with them, rather than just doing it by yourself. So having that sort of interspersed occasionally is awesome.
Yeah,
for sure, definitely. Where were the two of you last? Where are you right now, and where are you traveling to next?
We were in the UK last. Where were we? When did we get there? We got there about October, and we stayed through until January, which was a long time, especially for me during the weather in the UK over that time of year.
Right.
We were brought to the UK by Kim had an international art fair in Switzerland, so we sort of based ourselves in the UK first, so she could get prepped for that. And then we were in the UK. We both wanted to spend Christmas with our families, and we haven't. That's the first time we spent Christmas in the UK for 4 years. So that was a major thing for us. And then we stayed there till sort of end of January, at which point we moved to Mexico, which is where we are now. And we're in Playa del Carmen, which is on the east side, as I'm sure you know, in the Yucatan Peninsula. And we're here for 3 months as well. And then next up is Cuba. So last year we did about 9 countries, and some places we were in for like 4 days or 2 weeks or a month, and we realized there was a lot of moving and a lot of sort of up sticks and not being able to settle down or get any roots or immerse ourselves in the culture. So we wanted to slow down this year, which is what we've started doing so far.
Gotcha. Yeah, Natalie and myself have been planning a trip to Cuba sometime this year. We don't know yet, but that's definitely up there on our list. What are you guys going to do when you're in Cuba?
Well, we're going to start off in Havana. We're actually being joined by Jim's godfather, so that'll be really nice to travel with him. He's joined us a couple of times. He came to Australia, didn't he, to see us? So that'll be really cool. So we're in Havana, I think, for 4 days, and then we're going out into the countryside. We've got a place to do some hiking and to see the countryside. So we don't really know too much about it. We need to do some planning.
Yeah, well, we say that a lot, but we never actually get around to
it. But we do like to take opportunities as they come. So sometimes we don't necessarily plan too much, do we? So when we decided to come to Mexico, we did actually sort out our accommodation beforehand, which gave us that little bit of stability. But Cuba, we're kind of going with the flow a little bit. at the moment, aren't we? We haven't looked into it too much. So yeah, if you've got any, from your research, if you've got any tips and hints and inspiration, we'd love to hear it. And any of your listeners.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely keep in touch about that for sure. So you were saying in the past year you went to 9 countries, some shorter times, some longer times. What country had the longest or the most lasting impact on you guys that you guys were just blown away by it?
That's a good question. Probably New Zealand for me. I've never been to New Zealand. Like I said, I lived in Australia for 5 years, but before that I lived in British Columbia, and I was friends with lots of Kiwis and Australians living over in Whistler in the mountains and the lakes and everything else. And so many of them said, if you love this place, you'd love New Zealand. And I've always wanted to go. And when I lived in Australia for 5 years, it was, we're in Perth. So it seems like it's close, but it's not. It's, it's like a 11-hour, 12-hour trip over to New Zealand. So when we finally got to go, it was absolutely epic. And it was the winter time. We had a camper van, and we were there for the Lions tour, which is a rugby tournament, which is basically Britain and Ireland have a rugby team every 4 years, and they play New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia, rotating every 4 years. So they actually only play in New Zealand every 12 years. So we're both massive rugby fans. We met actually playing rugby when we were 11, and huge bucket list item to tick off. So we realized we couldn't miss it. It was well out of our way, but we went over there and we spent a month there in a camper van during the winter. We did the North Island, we did the South Island, and living in a camper van, as I'm sure you know, you have so much more flexibility and freedom to stay longer in places, to move on from places if the weather's no good, and you see so much more of nature, which is what we both love. So the sunrises, the sunsets, cooking in the van right next to a lake, and I actually went back through my photographs a couple of days ago. I was showing somebody, and even I was surprised by how amazing the scenery was again. I was like, wow, it was really good, wasn't it? It's like, you come around every corner, it's like, wow, that's the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it literally was like that, wasn't it?
Another corner, wow, no, that's the best thing I've ever seen. And then the action, the availability of adventure sports out there is epic. So even just a small little village in the middle of nowhere has a whitewater rafting centre, and there's hundreds and thousands of them. There's jet boating and bungee jumping and just whitewater rafting, and so much epic stuff. So that was certainly it for me. I don't know about you, Kim.
Yeah, New Zealand, because of the rugby, I think, like Jim said, it only happens every 12 years in New Zealand, and the rugby culture that we both have grown up with is just so awesome in New Zealand, because it's the national sport, and the rivalry and the camaraderie of the sport is epic. And we were welcomed with open arms. There's thousands of fans that go over from Britain and Ireland for this tournament, and everybody knows what's going on. Everybody's talking about it, and we stayed in our camper van in the car park of a rugby club for a few nights, didn't we? They just opened the whole place up, and it was like we were part of the family. So that was really a huge experience for both of us that we've looked back on and absolutely loved it, didn't we?
And it was the first time Britain and Ireland had won a game in New Zealand for 30 years, and we were at those 3 games, 3 major tests, and we were at the winning game.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which was amazing. So that might never happen again.
Yeah.
That sounds like such a great experience for sure. So I'm sure you guys can agree that when you're traveling, there's so many unexpected things that come up. And with those unexpected things come many different types of experiences. Do you guys have an awkward, embarrassing, or hilarious travel experience that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes.
There'll be quite a few.
There's quite a few. I suppose this one comes into if you were me, it was really painful and not awkward, but just exhausting. And if you were everyone else in the car, it was absolutely hilarious.
I was in the car. And it was hilarious.
Kim was in the car. My middle brother was in the car, and my best friend was in the car. And it was in Siena in Italy, a really old historic city in Tuscany in Italy. And Kim and I had been traveling. This was before we were properly traveling, and before when we were still sort of naive as to how much you could achieve in a short space of time. So we'd done 6 countries in 2 weeks around Europe, which was exhausting. And we were getting the train all day and sleeping for like 4 hours, then getting another train somewhere else. And then we'd driven through Hungary in a day, which was, I think I drove for like 11 hours during the like an absolute torrential downpour the whole time, which was mentally and physically exhausting. And then we got to Italy and we spent a few days. And then, so I didn't realize how tired I was. And then the last thing you want to do when you're really tired is meet my middle brother and my friend, who were both very, very full on and energetic, and obviously we just wanted to go out on the beers straight away. So we, I picked them up, and it was me that was driving the car, and we drove through all the hills in Tuscany. It was absolutely amazing. And then we got near Tuscany, which was near Siena, which is where our first night was. And I don't know if you've ever driven in Italy or if you know anyone who has, but it's not the most painless experience in the world. In fact, it's fairly horrific. They treat the cars like dodgems over there, and because it's such an old historic town, Google Maps just could not deal with the one-way streets and the cobbled alleyways and the things that looked like roads but weren't. They were thoroughfares, and Google Maps started having a meltdown about 2 miles out, and our place was right in the heart of it. And to cut a very long story short, we ended up driving down the middle of a cobbled street at about 2 miles an hour because people were walking around us. It was like walking down the middle of a shopping mall. And we were just staring into the window. Kim, Sam, and Rich were absolutely pissing themselves laughing. And I was in the front seat going, oh my God, I just want to get a beer. I just want to go to bed. I'm absolutely knackered. So we had to do a 3-point turn in a church, like courtyard, like the forecourt at the front of the church, where you're definitely not supposed to be driving. And then eventually we got a tap on the window. That's how slowly we were driving, from a police officer who was like, what are you doing here? You're definitely not supposed to be driving. They were like, this is where we're trying to go, and we got a police escort walking. And then she said, right, I can't take you any further than this. You've got to go up here. Said, right, we got lost again because Google Maps was having a meltdown. So we got another police escort. And then eventually we finally got to where we were. And it was exhausting, hilarious for everyone else. That I just wanted to be anywhere else but there. But if it was me in the back seat, I would have definitely laughed. So I'm not blaming them for sure.
For sure. Okay, so flipping this another way, traveling together, have you ever, or do you have the worst travel experience that you'd like to share?
The worst one, it's quite hard to. I think we always try and flip it around, don't we? And just kind of view everything that's an experience rather than being bad. Is it challenging? I think actually when we were in New Zealand last year, we first picked up the van, and because we have our own businesses, we just tried to do everything, didn't we? We were trying to work, we were trying to go hiking, see the scenery, get involved with the atmosphere of the rugby tournament. So that was really challenging because we were just trying to do too much, weren't we?
Yeah.
And we kind of had to have this little sit down and a word with ourselves and be like, look, what's the objective? Why are we here? And so we kind of took it a little bit of a backseat work-wise, didn't we, during that time? Because driving around, trying to do everything all at once, it was like we weren't making the most of the experience. We weren't making the most of where we were and what we were trying to achieve.
Everything was suffering as a result. We weren't doing anything properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, work was the first thing that took a hit.
Yeah.
Right.
We can do that at the time.
Are we going to stop exploring? Are we going to stop driving? Are we going to stop seeing cool things? We're going to stop working. Right, we'll probably stop working.
Yeah.
That was tough.
For sure.
Yeah. So we've had a couple of things, turning up to hotels and no one's there. And there was one time before we started living nomadically when we were in Europe, the same trip actually as when we went to Siena. We were in Hungary and we arrived late at the train station and we rocked up to this Airbnb that we booked, and it was literally just one night because we were getting a train the following morning somewhere else, and the train the next day was like 4 a.m. So we were literally coming in for a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours to sleep for the night. But then we rocked up there and the lights were off, no one was home.
It was like midnight when we rocked up.
Yeah, and we had to walk, and it was really dodgy. There was like derelict buildings, and I was so scared. And Jim was really brave and went into this place.
I am brave.
He was really brave, and he used his high school German to get by, and I was really impressed. So,
nice.
And then we kind of there was a key in the door, wasn't there? And you went in and it was pitch black, and I stayed kind of outside with the bags, and we ended up getting into this place. but it was so sketchy.
We ended up, semi-breaking into this place where we booked a room, but
there was a key in the door, but there was no staff there was no lights on, but they kind of knew, they must have known we were coming because there was a key in the door, but you don't really feel like you can walk into someone. I mean, it wasn't a house, but it wasn't like a... There was about 10 or so rooms. I was just looking around, and then eventually I found a door with a key in it, and I was like, oh, is that ours? Or is there somebody inside with a shotgun? Yeah, so it's a good story to tell now, but at the time, that's probably the most scared I've ever been.
Definitely. That's a good story. So with all these experiences, how do you feel that traveling has affected your relationship together?
I don't think affected it is the right word. I think we've definitely become, well, to start with, because we've known each other so long, we were definitely aligned in so many ways. So we've it's been a big learning curve for both of us, to be honest, because we started our own businesses at the same time as starting nomadic living. And it's a big step to take. Beforehand, we both had 9-to-5 jobs, working in the corporate sector and doing lots of normal things, had a routine. And so it's a big step to start with, but then starting our own businesses at the same time and just massive learning curve. And I think we just had to spend a lot of time talking about it and discussing what our objectives were, why we were doing this, and just being each other's cheerleaders and making sure that when we did have down times, just to make sure that we both had each other. And our relationship is so strong that it's probably got stronger.
Yeah. And you get to know each other so much more so than just living together and working together is one thing, but I mean, spending a month in a tiny camper van where you can barely stand up and running a business and cooking and traveling and sleeping together in the same tiny little space, if you can get through that, you do find out a lot about each other that you didn't realize you knew. And I think you just get better at compromising. You get better at understanding the other person's needs, knowing full well that if you try and make it all about you all the time, it's going to backfire fairly quickly. Yep. So I think it's strengthened it, it's clarified things.
Yeah.
So continuing on from that, because you guys have known each other for so long, do you guys still find ways to learn more about each other through your travels? Does something always present itself that makes you think, oh, I didn't know about you before? Or do you guys find yourselves thinking that you already knew that this person was going to react this way? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think because there's so many new things that we're experiencing, especially throwing in the business aspect. We're both new to businesses. Well, as of 12 months ago, we were both new to businesses, and 12 months in the business world is very much its infancy. So from that perspective, which plays a huge role in our life because that's what we spend probably the vast majority of our time doing. There's always going to be new things, learning how each other copes with businesses, how we cope with setbacks in our work, how we cope with celebrations in our work, and also. When you hang around with new people who've never met you before, they ask questions of your partner. Someone asked questions of Kim or someone asked questions of me that the other person didn't think to answer or didn't think to ask. So then when I hear the answer, I'm like, oh, okay. I might not have guessed that answer type thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, because like Jim says, with the business side of what we're doing, just helping each other. If we know the answer, we can find the answer out together, or we definitely talk a lot about it. I mean, with Jim's business, what he does, he's helped me huge amounts with what I'm doing, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little while. But it's interesting, and it's always growing and we're always learning.
Yes.
So it's great.
Yeah, 100%.
So do you guys have any other advice you'd like to give travel couples out there when it comes to their relationship in traveling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've touched on it a couple of times. And I think the fundamental thing is to have alignment with your objectives. So what are you trying to achieve when you're traveling? Whether it's what places you want to go to, what you want to achieve, how you want to be fulfilled from your experiences. I think if that's in alignment with the two of you, that will be huge to make the most of your experience and to enjoy it. I think that's the main thing, isn't it? To have a good time and to make sure that you're getting everything possibly that you can from each experience.
Yes, and then wherever there isn't alignment, because you can't be aligned on everything. Kim and I are lucky that we have so much in common and we love doing so much similar stuff. But there are bits that we don't necessarily love that the other person does. And when it comes to those things, you've just got to get really clear on what they are and communicate openly about, what it is that you want to do. So if don't suffer in silence. So if Kim's sitting there after a couple of days in a new country and she's sort of itching to go and immerse herself in more culture and see more arty, creative things, tell me, let me know. And then, she either goes and does it by herself and I don't give it, I give her the space to do that. I don't try and hold her back, or I go with her and appreciate the fact that she will come with me on something that I enjoy at another occasion. But just compromising and getting really clear on that, on what the other person wants to do. Because ultimately, if the other person's happy, then the chances of you being happy are much higher. So, making sacrifices is massively important. And that's the case in any relationship. But when you're traveling, it's just so much more heightened. And I suppose the final thing would be to make sure that you do get time apart, because it would be too easy to just stay in the same house, work it. Like for us, we get an apartment, we work all day, we get up at 5 a.m., start work at like 6:30, and then sometimes you work through until 7 or 8 at night. It's just really important to make sure that you do make an effort to go out, spend time apart from each other and get new experiences, so that when it's constantly freshened up, you don't get sort of, familiarity breeds contempt, doesn't it? So if you can throw in a bit of variety in there and time with other people, then that would, I think that would add a lot of value as well.
For sure. Definitely good advice. So the two of you have your own online businesses, and before we jump into that, what was the catalyst or the jumping off point to the two of you deciding to take this leap and to create your own online businesses?
That's a good question, and I'll try and keep the answer short. I struggle with keeping answers short generally, but this one's potentially a massive one. The short version is I was driving to work one morning and in Australia, in Perth, and I just sat there and had an epiphany. I'd been listening to podcasts, business podcasts, traveling podcasts for a little while, and I just had an epiphany. At that point, Kim and I were planning on buying an investment property in Perth that we would then live in for tax reasons for a year, and then rent it out, or let it, and then travel the world and carry on doing our full-time jobs up until that point. And I was just driving to work one morning, had an epiphany. I was like, I know what we need to do. We need to quit our jobs now. We need to start our own businesses and start traveling the world now. And then I spent all day at work convincing myself that was the only way to go. And there was no other option for me. And that was occasionally, that's happened twice in my life. It's weird. And every 5 years I get these epiphanies. It's so strange. So then by the time I got home from work, I sort of sat Kim down and said, I've got an idea, sit down. And then I told her, and then it's only afterwards I realized how lucky I was that she said, yes, okay, without any need for explanation or justification. It was like, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So
I think your timeline was a little bit sooner than I expected, though.
Yeah, I wanted to go the next day. Kim was more realistic, so we went about 6 months later.
And I think one of the most important factors as well, and looking back, it's unfortunate at the time, but in hindsight, what an opportunity. Unfortunately, at the time, our permanent residency visa for Australia didn't go through. So we really had to do some thinking on what we were going to do. And it was around the same time that Jim had these ideas. So it wasn't a case of, do we stay in Australia or not? We couldn't stay in Australia. So that was the next step, wasn't it? And I definitely went through a few months of, I call it being in no man's land. We, like Jim said, we were going to buy a property in Australia and live in it for a year and then travel. So I kind of had a year in my head where we were going to still be settled and have a good income and things like that. Because when we started our businesses, we, like I said just before, we did everything all at once. We jumped in 2 feet. So I wouldn't necessarily advise that, because it was quite hard to deal with. Right. You're trying to enjoy the traveling, because we went to Japan first from Australia, and then trying to start your own businesses, and a little bit like when we were in New Zealand, trying to do everything all at once. It's quite overwhelming. So I wouldn't suggest do that, but I would definitely suggest thinking on it and seeing if there's people out there who want to do what we're doing. Obviously get in touch, and you're more than welcome to ask us some questions, but maybe take one thing at a time. Go and do some long-term travel, get a sabbatical from work, and try it before you go and jump both feet in.
Yeah, or take little breaks and try and work remotely when you go away for a weekend or a week at a time. It really does depend on what your personality is like and what your situation is financially, your relationship with your kids or whatever. I mean, for us, we're both fairly we've got a high risk tolerance. We'd been saving up, so we had the money. If we didn't treat it as a risk at all, which is never going to happen, but if the businesses didn't succeed like we thought they would, then we had that buffer there, and we thought that whatever money we spend is a lesson. It's not wasted. It's not down the drain, because it would be an amazing experience. We'd learn from it. So no matter what happened, it was going to be a win. But that would probably be it.
So let's talk a little bit about the two of your online businesses. Let's start with Jim in the Untamed Entrepreneur. Can you introduce to us what this is all about?
Yes, sure, can do. The mission I have is to help people align themselves with their purpose and with their passions through entrepreneurship. And it's a journey I went on. It culminated, took about 2 years when I was living in Australia, and it was around the time when I had this idea of starting travel. That was the sort of nadir of it. And I was right, okay, at some point I want to get into business, but what business do I want to run? What can be designed around me, what I'm great at, what I love doing, and what kind of lifestyle I want to lead. Because I was getting more and more dispassionate about the job I was in. I was waking up later in work. I was arriving in the office later. I was caring less when I got there. I was becoming a bit more bitter towards my co-workers and my boss and everything else. And at some point I was like, right, something's got to change here. I stopped being really excited about every morning, which has always been a characteristic of me and the jobs I've had and the lifestyle I've had. So at some point I said, right, this has got to change. So I spent so much time and money and energy trying to establish what business it is that I was going to do. Because if I was going to do a job, it was, do it properly type of thing.
Right.
And ultimately, ironically, I realized that what I wanted to help people with was to go through the same process I'd gone through. Because I know so many, especially now working in this industry, I know so many people who talk about that they're longing for travel, they're longing to be more purposeful, they're longing to live their passions more intently and to do something that's more fulfilling for them, and they don't know what that thing might be. So basically my mentoring is helping people go through that process, and I've got a 5-step process to help people get clear on their identity, what their mission might be, what they're passionate about, who their customer should be, who are they inspired to serve, and then we go on to then discuss, okay, what might a business look like and how can it be designed around you. And then I have the other sort of half of my clients are business owners already, and it's the same 5 steps. It's just getting clear on their identity, getting clear on where in the business they should be operating to be in a flow state as often as possible, to be adding maximum value and having maximum amount of fun. Who their target market is, get really clear on that. What their products or services are, get really clear on that, and also what the mission of the company is. With the general idea being simplicity, minimalism, keeping it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. So they're the 2 strands of clients I have, and then I have clients in Canada, USA, Greece, and the UK.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
Nice.
It's absolutely awesome.
Awesome. And then Kim, tell us a little bit about Vega Beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vega Beyond is a concoction of my passions, which is art, photography, and travel. And I'm a visual artist. I use my background in photography. Before working in the corporate sector in Perth, I was a photographer for about 10 years. And whilst I was working in Perth, I carried on that. So I was working on the side, and then I was doing lots of different creative projects. I always need something to, that outlet, that creative outlet. So I started doing the technique I do now about 2 years ago, and it's a mixed media artwork using black and white, strong imagery from travel as the foundation of the work. And then I do a lot of research into colour culture and everything that surrounds what colour means to people, what colour means to different communities, and also colour in nature, which differs so much depending on where you are and what countries you go to. So the nomadic lifestyle really fuels my creativity, and like Jim said about getting into flow, this lifestyle is certainly providing all the ideas and the inspiration that I need to do my work. And what I try to do is, I'm not necessarily a teacher in that kind of sense of the word, but I do believe in, if I can lead my own life full and creative and to the best of my ability, I can hopefully inspire people to do the same thing. So I realize there's lots of different ways people can be creative. And I think, and I believe, should I say, that it's so important for somebody's ultimate happiness and fulfillment to be creative and to use that part of you. It could be like, for me, I'm an artist, or for Jim, it's creating ideas and helping other people, build businesses. For other people, it might be, I don't know, being creative with their travel plans, or just the smallest things. Everybody is creative in their own unique way. So I really try to inspire people to lead creative and full lives. And travel is a huge part of that, because so many people are inspired when they go to different countries. So with my own artwork, I really try and I really try and put that into the work so it comes across. And, I'm very well aware that people have different opinions on artwork, and, whether they like it or not like it, the concept behind my work is a little bit more deep, which it is in lots of people's artwork as well. But it's very much a reflection of how I live my life. It's bold. There's elements of minimalism in there, inspired by colour, and very much so driven by the travel that we do.
I think for both of us, just to jump in, I think for both of us, what's really central to all that is knowing exactly what it is you love doing and what you want to spend most of your time doing. I have conversations with people all the time. Oh, I'd love to live the lifestyle you lead, but... And then they come up with some crap excuse as to why they can't do it. And it's limiting beliefs, and it's barriers that people put up for themselves. No one else is putting up. In some cases, there's family constraints, relationships, or whatever. But in most cases, it's constraints that barriers that they put up themselves. And what we both are inspired to do, and what we both love doing, is helping people sort of debunk myths. And by doing it by example, and say, look, this is what's stopping you. I mean, we said to ourselves, look, if we're young, we're not married, we don't have kids, we haven't got a mortgage. If we can't do this now, we're never going to do it. And if we can inspire people by doing it, then, and sort of educate people and inform people as to the ways and means of doing that, then that's something that we would both love to do, and both strive to do all the time.
Yeah,
for sure. Definitely. And I like that you said that you guys, like Jim was saying before, that he wanted to do it the next day, but you took your time with it, and you planned it out before you went ahead and to go with it. But during that time, I know with a lot of people starting an online business or starting a business in general, it's difficult to get that first little bit of momentum, or that first traction to really light the spark that is your business. How did you guys go about doing that? What do you guys have a specific tool you used, or anything that you want to give our listeners as advice to get that initial traction for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, you've just got to start. So if you have an idea of what it is that you're passionate about and what you think a business might be based around, don't worry about the nuances, the nuts and bolts of how you're going to make money from it yet. Don't worry about how you're going to find customers. Just start doing it. If it involves helping people in some way, start helping people. Find out who you want to help the most, in what way you want to help them, and then just start serving people. You get so much feedback from that. You get so much positive energy. You get so much momentum. If it's writing, or even if it's something that's an idea you have, just get it out on paper. Start talking to people. You'll find that as you start to talk about it or write it down, that helps manifest the idea. People will then start to hear about it, give you feedback, and it just gets that ball rolling. And for me, the first thing was just with my initial business idea was just to start writing about my story up to that point. And I only wrote a page and then abandoned it because that was it. That was all. The ball started rolling, and then I switched on to writing, designing and building a website.
And I think once you start, you'll then like you said, you'll go off onto another little tangent maybe, and the more you do that, you'll get clarity on what it is you definitely want to do. And I think for both of us, actually, once we'd realised what the crux of it was, what the core of our purpose was, if you like, that's when you can really start to dig deep. But yeah, just go out and try a few things, and then it will become more clear as where you want to focus your energy, for sure.
Just an example, I was talking to someone last week, having a free call with him to try and help him out, because he's got this business idea he's been procrastinating about for ages. So we got clear on what it is that he wants to do and who he wants to serve, and he wants to help people who've sort of had injuries, who then really struggle to get back into whether it's work or relationships or whatever it might be, just the mental side of things. So he's talking how passionate he wants to help people. I'm saying, well, you've got to put yourself in a position where you can do that more often, and provide that fulfillment and that engagement and also that feedback. So, I saw a video yesterday. He's just started his own Facebook group. So, it's free to start a Facebook group. He's probably helped people in the past, so just invite them in, ask for referrals just to get people in. And all he has to do is just start posting videos, start asking questions, start, inviting people to come on a call with him. He's not making any money from it yet, but who cares? He can do that for 6 months while he's still doing his current job. But he's just getting that ball rolling and getting that feedback and that momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, yeah. So then the two of you have, Jim, you need to find clients for your business, and Kim, you need to find an audience that is interested in your artwork. Can you give a little small piece of advice about how do you find those people? Where do you find them to get that ball rolling, to get some traffic?
Well, I suppose it goes back to what I mentioned before in the 5 steps that I take people through. You've got one of those steps is to get really clear on your who. So who is it that you really, really want to serve? Not just sort of think, I could make money from that audience, but who are you inspired to serve? Because you've got to be inspired by what you're doing, and you've got to be inspired by who you're serving. And once you get that, you can say, right, okay, this is the person I have in mind, and I get my clients to create an avatar, like a proper template, give this person a name, an age, a social status, marital status, family situation, hobbies, everything else. So then you can get ultra clear on who that is. And then once you can get clear on who they are, then you can say, right, well, okay, I've got a demographic of 25. So in my case, I've got a demographic of 25 to 35-year-old males who sort of live, who are active and sort of gregarious and sort of out there. Where are they going to be? Now I know who they are. Where are they going to be hanging around? Whether they're on Facebook groups, whether they're in specific countries or regions or what have you. For me, and then you've got to bring it back to what kind of business you want to run. So I do one-on-one mentoring, which means it's high value, low volume. I'm not selling 1 million books at $10 or $20 each. I'm bringing clients on for much higher value. But then because it's my time, I only need 10, 15 clients. So the way I approach clients is different to the way somebody who would be selling a $20 product. So for me, it was all about my network. And again, it's going back to my strengths and what I enjoy doing. I've always enjoyed building a network, and I've always enjoyed just making friends and learning and growing my list of people I know. So all my attention, I dabbled in Facebook advertising for a while, but not worth it for me because it would have taken too long and too much money to obtain clients for that. So I said, I went out of my network quite proactively, and then referrals on top of that, and based on what I like doing and what my business is. And that's all of my clients have come through either my own network or one degree removed from that.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, network is huge. So if you've got an idea, if it's very at the start of what you want to build, just talk about it. Talk about it to your network, talk about it to your friends, your family, your colleagues, and then just verbalizing it and getting it out there is such a huge step, because then it kind of, you've said it out loud and it's starting to become a little bit more real, and then you'll do something else. And it's just those little steps you can take to, make it get a bigger reality. So yeah, network is really big, and we're both. I mean, I was quite shy to start with because artwork is quite personal, and, putting myself, in that area to be rejected, basically. So I'm getting better at that, but it's definitely something I need to work on. It comes very naturally to Jim. He loves talking, loves showing off.
Yeah, I talk to anyone, even if they're not interested in what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah. It just doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was going to say something else, and I've just forgotten. Yeah, that's it. So there's so many people out there who probably hold themselves back from starting a business because they hate, in inverted commas, sales. Sales does have a very bad word for obvious reasons. Some people find it cringeworthy, like cold calling, everything else. Sales doesn't have to be like that. So I don't like that kind of sales, but I love talking to people and just having honest relationships. So just don't treat it as selling your business, just treat it as talking about it. And then as you do that more and more, and you can prove to people that you add value, then that becomes, just talking about your business. If it's something you're passionate about, which it should be 100%, then that sale will come across in the way you talk about it. And then also you'll make evangelists of the people in your network, and they will do the selling for you. So that's a little piece of advice I'd give to anyone who's really afraid of selling their business and doesn't like trying to pitch, in inverted commas. You don't have to. Just reframe it and just, if it's something you're passionate about, just talk about it, and your energy and your positivity will be obvious.
Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent advice, guys. So what is next for Jim and Kim in your business lives, personal lives, whatever you want to say here?
Wow, we don't really plan. So it's hard to say. What's next? So we're in Mexico now. We're going to be in Cuba. So travel-wise, that's all set for the moment. I think after Cuba, we're going to go back to Europe to spend some time in Spain. We've been learning Spanish while we've been here in Mexico. We actually started in January when we were still in the UK, but since coming to Mexico, we've tried to immerse ourselves in the language as well. We try to do that when we travel, is live like a local, because I think people get so much more from their experience when you do that. So yes, hopefully Spain or another Spanish speaking country to carry on that skill. It's been really fun, hasn't it? Kind of going back to school and learning something like a language.
Nice.
Which is something that I always wanted to do, but it was a bit scary, and I was like, it's too hard. But then once you start to do it, it's good fun.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference when you're in a place. And for me, as well as the traveling, for me, that last year was the sort of foundation year for the business, and it's going really well. Towards the end of last year, it started picking up nicely, and then this year's carried on really well as well. So I want to just, this year I'm spending building a team around me to do the stuff I don't like doing and the stuff that I'm not very good at. And sort of looking at, I hate using the word scale because it's such a cliche term in business, but ultimately one-on-one mentoring, my time is, what I'm trading for money. So looking at other ways, bringing in group courses, offering like a three package group course for like 8 to 10 people on a call at the same time. And then the bigger vision after that is to train people up on my material, on my 5 steps, and then have them, sort of licensed to do the training on my behalf. So that's the vision probably for next year. But then this year will be spent working up to that and trying to stay in my flow state as often as possible, which is doing the calls themselves.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, there you have it. Jim and Kim sharing their travel stories with you today on the To the Nations Worldwide Travel Couple podcast. I just want to say a very special thank you to our guests for joining me on this podcast. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm going to hand the floor over to you, and anything you want to leave our audience with, where they can find you online, anything you want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So we both have our own websites. Mine is my name, so www.kimuden.com. And I also write a blog, so lots of things on art, photography and travel that you can read up on. And lots of photography, lots of my artwork, and hopefully I can inspire you. I'm on Instagram, which is Vagabeyond. So that's my company name. And please just get in touch if you have any questions at all. We have lots of time. Well, we'll make time to answer your questions and keep in touch. And if you're traveling, if you're doing what we're doing and you're in Mexico right now, or you're going to be in Cuba, we'd love to get some tips on Cuba. So please let us know.
Yeah, and from my side, if anyone out there is thinking about starting a business or living a nomadic lifestyle and they've kind of got questions, they feel like they've got more value to add to the world, but they're not sure on what next steps to take, then let me know. Go to my website, which is theuntamedentrepreneur.com, and there's a contact form. You can read about me and the journey I've been on to get to where I am. You can read a little bit about my mentoring process, and there's a newsletter you can sign up to, and I share my travel stories and then sort of tips and tricks and on how to start a business. And if you do sign up to the contact form, I'm happy to give you a free 30-minute Skype call just to get an idea about you and what you might be great at, and how we can design a business around your passions and your purpose. So I'd be more than happy to give that time to any of your listeners, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Thank you to all of our listeners out there, to the nations worldwide. We cannot express our appreciation enough for having you listen to this episode. Visit us at travelcouplepodcast.com/18 for this episode's show notes and to learn more. Leave a comment on the page. We'll be sure to get back to you. And if you'd be so kind, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. It would mean the world to us. You can find out more about us on our website at tothenationsworldwide.com. You can find out where we've traveled on our blog, more about our podcast, and even join our Travel Couple Book Club. This is Mike Futz and
Natalie,
hoping you have a wonderful adventure to the nations worldwide.